Hi, I am PixelPia, and you are welcome to this special podcast series. What you're about to hear is something a little different. It's an experiment in AI-generated content. Every episode of this podcast is entirely created by artificial intelligence, from the research to the voices you'll hear in the conversations. The AI tool NotebookLM from Google collects and organizes information from various articles online. And then two AI voices, one male, one female, come together to discuss the topic, just like they're having a natural conversation. But before we dive into the AI's perspective on today's topic, I wanted to let you know that this project is all about exploring the creative potentials of AI. It's fascinating to see how far technology has come. And this podcast is a way for me to experiment with these tools and share that journey with you. Everything from the dialogue to the images used for each episode is generated by AI. I am here to guide you through it. But after this introduction, everything you will hear and see is created by AI. So let's dive into today's conversation and see what AI has to say.
All right, so you want to get really good at using Midjourney.
Yeah, it seems like it.
You sent us a whole stack of articles on prompting.
It's cool because, like you were saying, they're all about Midjourney prompts, but they kind of approach it from these different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got one that's like Midjourney Prompting 101, the basics, and then you've got another one that's like, become a Midjourney master.
Okay, so we're going to distill all that for our listeners right now.
Exactly.
We're going to break it all down.
We're going to uncover the good stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was so fascinating was that one of the articles talked about using photography terms to guide Midjourney.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever told an AI to use golden hour lighting?
I mean, that's a really good example of how, understanding, different fields and their nuances can lead to more interesting outcomes in AI. It's like speaking the AI's language.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Speaking of speaking AI, one of the articles had a section about what not to do.
Oh, really?
And one of them was using negative prompts.
Oh, yeah.
So like saying, don't make it look like a cartoon.
Right.
That just confuses the heck out of Midjourney.
It's so true. And it's something that is very different from how humans think.
Yeah.
If I tell you, don't think of a giant elephant wearing polka dots, what's the first thing you're going to think of?
Yeah.
A giant elephant wearing polka dots.
It is that.
So it's just it just shows that AI is not thinking the same way that we are. It's a completely different thing.
So how do we think like Midjourney? How do we get on its wavelength?
All of the articles that you sent actually point to one thing that is so crucial.
Okay.
And that is specificity.
Okay.
So if you think about those magic eye pictures where the more details you can kind of pull out of that image, the more you can actually see what it is.
Right.
It's kind of the same way with Midjourney.
Okay.
So don't just say cat wearing a hat. You want to be as specific as possible.
So what would you say instead of cat wearing a hat?
A fluffy Persian cat wearing a miniature detective hat.
Okay.
Perched on a velvet armchair.
Uh-huh.
With a vintage book in its paws in the style of a Renaissance painting.
That's very specific.
Exactly.
Okay, so I get the specificity thing.
Yeah.
What about if you want to tell Midjourney to make something in the style of a specific artist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you do that?
You can definitely you can say make it in the style of Van Gogh.
Okay.
Or make it in the style of cyberpunk or whatever.
So I could literally say, create a cyberpunk cityscape in the style of Van Gogh.
Literally.
And it would do it.
Yeah, and it would probably be really cool.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Imagine the brush strokes.
Yeah.
And then you've got flying cars and neon signs.
That's amazing.
And one of the articles actually talks about how you can upload a reference image to Midjourney.
Wait, so you can say, make something like this, but different.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And you literally upload a photo.
So it's like giving it a mood board.
Exactly. And then it just gives it more information to work with.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And then on top of that, there's another layer of control that you can add to Midjourney.
Okay, is this getting very technical now?
No, not really.
Okay.
So you know how we were talking about like specifying everything?
Yeah.
There's also these things called parameters.
Parameters.
Yeah.
They're basically...
That sounds scary.
No, they're not that scary.
Okay.
They're basically like fine-tuning knobs
Okay.
that you can add to your image.
So if my prompt is like the main melody,
Yes.
the parameters are like the bass and the treble.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So like you can use parameters to control like the aspect ratio of an image.
Okay.
So like if you want to create something specifically for Instagram stories, you can say like, oh, make this 9:16.
Right.
Or you can control like the level of detail. You can control like the randomness of the composition.
There's actually a parameter called chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah, where you can make it
Wow.
really crazy and random.
That's amazing.
Or you can like tone it down.
Chaos. I like it.
Yeah.
I feel like that could either go really well or really badly.
That's where the artistry comes in.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about knowing how to use the tool. It's about like
Right.
really understanding how to translate your vision.
I'm seeing here that one of these articles gave us a bunch of sample prompts
Oh, cool.
to try out.
Yeah. What are some of them?
And some of these are kind of wild.
Okay.
This one says, a photo Canon R5 50mm lens DSLR pack of 3 lions walking through the streets of San Francisco golden hour. And then there's all these dashes and letters at the end.
Okay. So like right off the bat,
I know it's a lot.
I have so many questions, but like, why all of the camera specs?
Yeah, like, is that important?
Yeah.
Does it really matter?
It does. It really does. So like, remember how we were just talking about
Yeah.
speaking the language of AI?
Uh-huh.
When you're mentioning things like the camera, the lens, even like the type of lighting, you're really tapping into a very specific photographic aesthetic.
Okay.
So you're essentially telling Midjourney to think like a photographer.
So it's not just about what's in the photo, it's about how it's captured.
Exactly.
That's pretty wild.
Jeff.
Okay, lions walking through San Francisco.
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
there you go. This one I think is a really great example of using art styles.
Okay.
Okay, so this one says, a 15th century priest driving a spaceship under the sea surrealism.
Okay, first of all, I love how specific that is, 15th century priest.
Yeah.
And they're driving a spaceship,
Yeah,
but under the sea.
it's very specific.
And it's surrealism.
Yeah.
So it's going to look like a Dali painting or something.
Well, that's the thing. When you tell it surrealism, like it knows
Yeah.
that you want it to be bizarre and like kind of
Yeah.
dreamlike and, you know, just like really out there.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure.
Okay, so those are just 2 examples
Yeah,
of what we're working with here.
but there's so many.
But this is like a treasure trove of prompts.
Exactly. There are tons of them that we can go through.
Okay, so those prompts are amazing,
Yeah.
but they're also kind of intimidating.
Yeah. I can see how.
If you're just starting out,
Yeah.
like where do you even begin
Right.
with all this stuff?
Well, one of the articles actually talks about how, like, you should think of a prompt like building a house
Okay.
where you start with a simple foundation
Uh-huh.
and then you add details from there.
So instead of trying to write like this elaborate sentence,
Exactly.
you start with like cat wearing a hat.
Yeah. So you start with cat wearing a hat, then you go to cat wearing a detective hat.
Okay.
Then you go to like cat wearing a detective hat sitting in a cafe.
Okay.
And then you could say like cat wearing a detective hat sitting in a cafe film noir style.
I like that. And you just like gradually build up the details.
Exactly.
It reminds me of that game where you like draw part of a person and then you fold over the paper and someone else draws another part.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's that called?
Exquisite corpse.
Exquisite corpse. Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
I love that.
You're just like adding on to it.
Yeah. It's a very similar idea.
Yeah.
And speaking of like different ways to kind of like guide your prompts,
Yeah.
one of the articles talks about how you can use photography terms to guide Midjourney.
So it's like you're talking to a photographer friend
Exactly.
and you're like, okay, I need you to...
Yeah, like I need this to be like golden hour lighting with like like some lens flare, you know, and like
So instead of saying beautiful sunset, you'd say
exactly
golden hour.
You could say golden hour lighting, lens flare, warm tones, silhouetted figures.
Wow.
You know?
That's beautiful.
Exactly.
It's like poetry.
It is.
It's like we're writing poetry for robots.
We are. We totally are.
This is wild. Okay, so
Yeah.
we've thrown a lot of information at people today. What would you say is the most important thing for someone to remember if they're just starting out with Midjourney?
I would say the most important thing is to just experiment and have fun.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to like try different things,
Yeah.
play around with the different words,
Right.
see what kind of crazy stuff you can come up with.
Don't be afraid to break it.
Exactly.
You can't break it.
Exactly. It's the internet. And like that's the beauty of Midjourney is like it's really about like unlocking your own creativity.
Yeah.
Like you're not limited by your technical ability to draw or paint.
Right.
It's really about like what you can envision.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember earlier we were talking about that mind-blowing thing?
Yes.
Using AI to generate Midjourney prompts?
Yes.
We have to talk about that.
Okay, let's do it.
Because that just seems next level.
It is next level.
So how does that work?
So basically you can use something like ChatGPT to help you craft these like even more intricate and imaginative prompts.
So like instead of me like racking my brain trying to come up with something cool, I could just like feed ChatGPT a basic idea.
Exactly.
And it'll be like, here's your prompt.
Exactly. So you could say something like to ChatGPT, like write a Midjourney prompt for a photorealistic image of a cat wearing a spacesuit sitting on the moon with the Earth in the background in the style of a vintage sci-fi book cover.
Wow. And then it'll just do it.
And it'll just do it.
It'll create that prompt.
It'll create a prompt that Midjourney can then understand.
That is wild.
And then create an image from.
It's like AI working together.
It's AI collaboration.
To create art.
I know. It's amazing.
This is blowing my mind.
I know. It's so cool.
This is so cool.
This is like the future.
We've gone from like basic prompting techniques to like AI collaboration.
I know.
In like 20 minutes.
It's crazy, right?
This is amazing. Okay, so thank you to you out there in podcast land for sending us these awesome articles.
Yes, thank you.
For this deep dive.
To more AI-generated art.
We hope that you are inspired to go out there and create some amazing stuff with Midjourney.
Yes, go forth and create